What if I told you that a key part of our own evolutionary story, something that's been taught for a century, might be completely wrong? We're diving into a real-life scientific mystery today, and it's one that's shaking the animal family tree to its very roots. All right, so let's get right into it. For over 100 years, scientists have been super confident about this one core branch of the animal family tree. We're talking about our branch. It was, settled science, the kind of thing you learn in Bio 101 and never question. But what if it was all a mistake? What if that branch never even existed? Okay, so before we tear it all down, let's build it up. What was the story that everyone believed for so long? Let's look at our classic place in the animal kingdom. Yeah, we're talking the solid century. 100+ years where basically everyone in the field agreed. The tree of life is this huge, messy, complicated thing, but this part was thought to be rock solid. And here's the big name at the center of it all: Deuterostomia. It's a mouthful, I know, but basically it was our club. It lumps us, animals with backbones, in with some, let's be honest, pretty weird cousins, like starfish and these things called acorn worms. The whole reason we were grouped together was because of some similarities in how our embryos develop way back at the very beginning. Okay, so for 100 years, everything's fine. Then, a crack appears. And what's so cool is that the first clue that this huge idea might be wrong didn't come from some massive dinosaur fossil. Nope, it came from this tiny, almost invisible little predator called the arrowworm. You know how in every detective movie there's that one piece of evidence that seems to point one way, but it's actually a total red herring? Well, in this biological mystery, that red herring was the arrowworm. For decades, scientists pointed to it as proof that the Deuterostorm group was real. And this is where it gets really juicy. See, if you just looked at an arrowworm, and especially at its embryo, it ticked every single box for being a deuterostome. It looked the part, it acted the part. Case closed, right? Wrong. When scientists finally got the tools to look at its DNA, the genetics told a completely different story. It wasn't one of us at all. It belonged to the other big branch of the animal kingdom, the protostomes. With insects, mollusks, and snails. So hold on. Think about what that means. If this little worm could have all the supposed deuterostome features but not actually be a deuterostome, well then those features weren't so special after all, were they? It was like the one thing holding our whole group together was, well, maybe not real. Suddenly, the foundation for this century-old idea started to crumble. All right, so the arrowworm case blew the doors open. Scientists started thinking, okay, let's bring in the big guns. They turned their modern DNA analysis tools, the new forensic kit, on the entire deuterostome group. And what did they find? Well, the scientific papers used the word equivocal, which is a very polite, sciencey way of saying the results were a total mess. The DNA wasn't giving them a clear yes, it wasn't giving them a clear no. There was just no strong signal that these animals were actually related in the way we thought they were. So this leads to a huge question, right? Is there something wrong with our DNA analysis? Or is the DNA telling us the truth, that this group we've believed in for 100 years just isn't real? Maybe the confusion is the result. Well, many scientists now think the culprit is something called systematic error. And the camera lens analogy is perfect for this. Imagine you have a tiny smudge on your camera lens. Every single picture you take is going to have that same spot in the same place. You might start to think that spot is real, but it's just a flaw in your tool. That's what they think is happening here. A glitch in the analysis is creating a false pattern, making it look like deuterostomia exists when it might just be a ghost in the machine. Okay, so this is where things go from being a cool, nerdy science puzzle to something that really, really matters. Because if you redraw the family tree, you're not just correcting a textbook. You're rewriting the story of where we, and all complex animals, came from. So let's just ask it plainly. What happens if Deuterostomia, our own supposed branch of the animal kingdom, just poof, disappears? The consequences are just huge. It's a cascade effect. This isn't just a tiny tweak. It's hitting the reset button on our understanding of early animal evolution. We have to completely reevaluate where our own phylum, the chordates, even came from. And all these key traits we thought we understood, they might have appeared way earlier or in a totally different way than we ever imagined. Seriously, it changes the whole game. So where do we stand now? You might be hoping for a nice, clean answer, but that's not how science works. we're left right in the middle of a massive, unfolding scientific mystery. And honestly, that's the most exciting place to be. The old, clear picture is fading out. And the new one? Well, it's still being drawn. We're in that messy, incredible moment where an old idea is falling apart, and scientists are busy sketching out what comes next. It's a total work in progress.
You know that once solid branch on the family tree labeled Deuterostomia? Well, now it's basically a dotted line with a giant question mark next to it. The evidence is just weak, and there's a very real chance it's about to be erased from the tree altogether.
And that brings us to the big takeaway here. This story isn't really about science getting something wrong. It's about the process of science getting something right. It's about being brave enough to question everything, to test your assumptions, and even to throw out a 100-year-old idea if the evidence points that way. And that really makes you think, doesn't it? What other facts that we learn in school are just waiting for the right discovery to be completely rewritten?